Talofa Namaste, Haramai, and welcome to the Niche Cache, where we do what we want to do, chatting Aotearoa sports. And we are here to chat a bit of cricket later on. New Zealand Day in Sri Lanka. We got the Blackcaps in Bangladesh that starts later this week as well. We do have A-League football heading towards finals. A couple of funky performances going on there. Football Ferns are also in action. We do have the start of the NBL, the New Zealand NBL, the greatest NBL in the whole wide world. That has started, and of course we need to recap some of the NCAA stuff that was happening in another country that loves to have wars. But we had an epic Saturday evening, and it could have been a bit better, if we're being honest. Because the Wellington Phoenix went to Melbourne and defeated Melbourne Victory, which was their first win at Amy Park for ages, if not ever, question mark.
Like 8 or 9 years, something like that.
So that happened the week before. Then the Warriors go to Melbourne and they win at Amy Park, their first win there in yonks. If not ever, I don't know. I'm not a history guru, and it's okay. All I know is both teams won in Melbourne for the longest time that I can remember. And then the Melbourne Phoenix went back to Melbourne, and they couldn't get the another win there. So there was who'd they beat in that game at Amy Park? Was that City or Victory?
They beat Victory, and then they lost to City on Sunday, I think it was.
So they could have had 2 wins against the Melbourne A-League teams in Melbourne, back-to-back weekends, with the Warriors victory in Melbourne between them. But they didn't, and we'll discuss that later on. But we did have the Warriors win against the Melbourne Storm, which was very fun, very entertaining. The Warriors are now 3rd on the ladder. West Tigers are 2nd. We know who the Penrith Panthers are. We know what they do. The only thing I'd add about the Penrith Panthers is that they have a lot of Aotearoa flavour throughout their system. And folks may not be truly on top of how much the Penrith Panthers love New Zealand. Because they don't even have an NRLW team, but their under-19 Tarsha Gale Cup team that did have a victory in the first round of their finals has a bunch of players from New Zealand. So the Penrith Panthers don't have a women's team in the NRLW, but they do have young women from New Zealand already in their system. Players like Olive Connolly coming out of Christchurch, Melina Lavia coming out of Auckland, Taiali Araihi is from the Waikato, and Monica Benz from Auckland. They all played in their win over the weekend, let alone I think Patrick Moimoy got a hat-trick in New South Wales Cup. They've been having Tahami Loza has been their starting half in under-21 jersey flag, and so on and so on. So we know who the Penrith Panthers are, but do want to highlight them as lovers of Aotearoa Rugby League. West Tigers is a bit of a different story, because they're 2nd on the ladder playing good footy, with Benji Marshall as coach. And the Aotearoa vibe did increase for the Tigers in their win over the Knights, because Patrick Herbert returned to the NRL. He was starting centre. He was pretty good doing his job, and he was the only player from Aotearoa in that game for the Tigers. They've also got Bunty Afo, who's playing New South Wales Cup. And I did see that Jericho Felipe Talasau scored a try for their under-21. So they don't have a whole lot of Aotearoa flavour, but it did increase over the weekend. But mainly you've got Benji Marshall as coach. And I think, yes, Kieran Foran is also winning as an NRL coach. He's had a couple of wins as the interim coach, probably doing a little bit better, I'd say, than Chris Greenacre in that capacity. But I have found it interesting that two of the greatest rugby league players from Aotearoa, and let's narrow it down to the halves. In my lifetime, there's four great halves for New Zealand. Stacey Jones, Benji Marshall, Sean Johnson, and Kieran Foran. Two of them are NRL coaches right now. Stacey Jones is the Kiwis coach, obviously, and is also an assistant coach for the Warriors. But the newest coaches are Benji Marshall and Kieran Foran, both of whom are doing pretty well. And all the things we talk about rugby league with New Zealand, whether it's the Warriors doing all right, whether it's the Warriors already having 3 17-year-olds play New South Wales Cup this season, whether it's the Kiwi and NRL debuts, Te Huranui Apanui Twaidl, Antonio Verhoeven, Siali Whaiamani, Setutu, Francis Manuleilua, and the Kiwi NRL juniors and NRL Wahine juniors who are doing well in Australian systems. On top of all that, the regional mix, Christchurch producing excellent rugby league players, Verhoeven coming out of Greymouth, and so on and so on. On top of all that, we have 2 New Zealand coaches doing well as head coaches in the NRL. Well, one interim, one proper. So that is pretty awesome, and I'm really enjoying what Benji Marshall is doing for the West Tigers, which does make me wonder because the Tigers used to get the wooden spoon. And now here in 2026...
I don't like where this is heading.
Now in 2026, there's one team who has not won a game, who are bottom of the ladder, the St. George Illawarra Dragons. And, I mean, if the Tigers can start the season 4-1, I don't look into the future, so we'll just celebrate where they're at right now. 4-1, second on the ladder. Does make you wonder, what have the Dragons been up to? Because the Tigers were the wooden spoon. They were literally the wooden spoon, because that's all they did. Mayhem, dramas, all sorts of shenanigans. Then they get a Kiwi coach, and they're on the up and up. Meanwhile, the Dragons have been pretty mediocre that whole time. The Tigers were mediocre, and they haven't fixed it. So where are you at as our resident Dragons fan with a 0-6 start to the season and no signs yet that you're going to sack your coach?
Yeah, well, I think if we're dipping into the legendary Kiwi halves of yore, then I don't think they're looking for a coach. I think they'd actually just want them to play half, like Stacey Jones come out of retirement. You could be the starting halfback for the Dragons. Benji Marshall already once was a half for the Dragons, so he might be able to. I don't know if you're allowed to do double duty playing for one team and coaching another team, but if anyone could balance it, Benji Marshall could balance it. Or maybe they just need Benji Marshall's scouting tips because he rediscovered Patrick Herbert and the Dragons couldn't find a half with an entire off-season to look for. Did you hear that story about how he found him?
Well, Patrick Herbert was a Dragon. He
was a Dragon and a Warrior, wasn't he?
Yes, but he left Aotearoa to go straight to the Dragons. The Dragons recruited him from Auckland along with Stephen Masters. So the Dragons used to be good Kiwi NRL recruiters. And they were responsible for getting Patrick Herbert from First 15 Rugby in New Zealand into an NRL system. So the crossovers between good Tigers, bad Dragons continues. I've heard some stuff about how, Benji, but like Patrick Herbert I don't know why he wouldn't be playing NRL, but yeah.
Yeah, scouting like a Māori tournament or something during the off season, and Herbert happened to be playing, and he was the man. And Benji's like, I think they have like a regional connection or something like that as well. Just so like they're both from Whakatane or something like that. But it's a little bit outside the box work from Benji Marshall and Hera the Dragons, who knew they didn't have a second half, and it's like your best option is let's just sign a guy who the Sharks don't want, and that's more or less where I'm at with that. There's just there's not a lot going on for them on attack. They can actually, I actually quite like the Dragons forward pack. The young dudes they got there are pretty good. They roll down the field. They mostly make their tackles. Then the Dragons drop the ball or kick it dead, or bombs that land 15 meters off the goal line, or situations like that, and it just repeat this over and over and over for 6 weeks. So no, that's not actually been it's not been very fun to watch, to tell tell the truth.
Patrick Herbert is from Whakatane, so if you're from Whakatane, you've got a connection. You've got a connection to Benji Marshall right there. Which one of the Warriors halves would you like at the Dragons? And you can go NRL, so you can go Luke Metcalf, Chanel Harris-Tavita, Tana Boyd, Luke Hanson, Jet Cleary, Jack Thompson, Harry Inch. You might not know of Maui Winitana Patalaseo, but he's been playing a lot of under-21s for the Warriors. Maybe you could get a Wiramu Makea from Nelson College. Like, there's a whole lot of halves in the Warriors system, some of whom I just mentioned won't help you in the NRL. But, I mean, if you had...
Yeah, don't be too sure.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm thinking. Like, if the Dragons had some juice in their recruitment and scouting, they might have got Jack Thompson from the Knights. Instead, it was the Warriors, and Jack Thompson's 19 years old playing New South Wales Cup.
Yeah. But Kyle Flanagan's undroppable, so what are you going to do? You can't shuffle around that. Not without getting rid of the coach anyway. So Tana Boyd would be nice. It's a game controlling halfback. That would be pretty good. That seems like the skill set that the Dragons are most lacking. But frankly, any of the above at this point would not go astray.
Ronald Volkman?
Yeah, here's an idea.
Righto. So the Warriors' win against the Storm was quite impressive, and I don't know, this is a little bit complex in my mind because I do have an idea where, like, the Warriors are winning with a fair amount of players being used, and I don't know the exact number, but it does feel like there's a wide range of players being used, and that smells like the Blackcaps. Like, the Blackcaps win games in each format using over 20 players. Like, they took a second string group, ODI group, and won in India. They make T20 World Cup semi-finals and finals. They won a test series in New Zealand using their 8th, 9th, 10th seamer. Right now we've got a Bangladesh series where once again Blackcaps depth is on show. Because guys can go get some T20 jobs around the world, and the Blackcaps can still send a squad to play in Bangladesh, and I'm thinking they might do all right. One of our main foundation blocks, the stone that the builder refused, has been Blackcaps are good because the Blackcaps depth is awesome because so many different players are contributing to winning cricket. How can you have any complaints about Blackcaps depth when there are at least 20 players being used in each format over the past year or so? And the Blackcaps are holding steady. Sometimes doing crazy winning stuff as well. I get the same feeling from the Warriors, but I do have this other idea where, because Andrew Webster did get a bit crazy there for a couple of weeks, right? So he chopped and changed a lot of stuff, which is aligned with how I feel right now, where there were a few changes for that Melbourne Storm game. Khan Pereira on the wing, Harris Tavita back in the halves, Tuivasa Sheck at centre. You got Niokore back in the mix, so he's with Laban and Halasima and those type of things. There's a lot of movement and moving pieces in that Warriors NRL group. And I did complain about Webster just chopping and changing, but that kind of feels more like chopping and changing a winning team and artificially manufacturing this, like, all these changes for no real reason. But at the same time, if you're winning games, using a wide range of players, that's a good sign. And I'm kind of caught between these two worlds. Like some of the Australian NRL jokers love the Warriors' depth, and then you've got some other people saying the Warriors have no depth or have limit, like the outside back depth. The Warriors need another centre. I don't know. Tuivasa-Sheck and Auckland did pretty good at centres. Like, how many centres do you want? Because I think there's been Nickel Clockstar, Adam Pompey, Rocco Berry hasn't played this year. Tuivasa-Sheck's played. Adithya's played. There's 5 guys right there who can play centre. How many centres do we want? You want 6 or 7? Because you can't do that. Like, it's not going to be possible. But I think the way the Warriors performed and have won 4 games this season using a wide range of players, because I mentioned all the edge forwards in the Knights game, for example, 5 different dudes playing edge forwards there. It is quite impressive. And on top of that, similar to the Blackcaps, you've got such a wide range of guys contributing. Like in the Blackcaps Test series against the West Indies, it was Michael Ray. It was Zach Fox. It was Jacob Duffy. But then you've also got other guys coming into this Bangladesh series, your Matt Fishers, your Will O'Rourke's. Ben Sears is a factor as well. But he's not playing in Bangladesh. And let alone the guys who score runs. There's so many different guys who score runs across the formats for the Blackcaps. Same thing for the Warriors, where a lot of the players are doing well every single week. But then week to week in the wins, because the losses were pretty bad, in the wins, there's just different guys stepping up in different ways. Against the Storm, it was Dimitri Vaimunga. But before Dimitri Vaimunga had that game against the Storm, Tanner Stella-Smith was getting good minutes and like churning out big numbers and being one of the standout forwards in the losses and the wins. And then you might have Jackson Ford, Dally M winner. You got Fisher Harris leading everything that they're doing. You've got Halasima just chiming in when he needs to. That's all he needs to do. We're not Michael Ennis here. We're not looking for Halasima to be Jackson Ford. But my point is, and whether it's Tana Boyd in the back line, Tane Tuaupiki in the back line, Khan Pereira adding some speed and zip, like there's just so many different guys contributing to winning rugby league for the Warriors. And it's like Dimitri Vaimunga was awesome against the Storm. It doesn't mean anyone else was bad. It doesn't mean Aaron Clark was bad. It doesn't mean Jackson Ford was underwhelming. It's just in different games, different guys step up and go above and beyond what their usual mahi is, and I love it. I just love seeing different players showcase their talent in winning footy for the Warriors, and it was on display against the Storm because there were just so many different contributions, and some contributions that we hadn't seen so far this season, whether it is Vaimunga, who had a game or one game, I think, who he didn't play coming off the bench. So he's been in the top 19 the whole season, and he was doing his job, and then he went crazy against the Storm. You got those type of situations, but then you got other situations like Khan Pereira, who hasn't been playing NRL, steps into the NRL and does his job with his own style. So not only was it a good win for the Warriors as far as responding with the physicality and execution and getting into their flow of how they want to play rugby league, but we've also seen it across all these wins for the Warriors where you have different players stepping up. And not everyone is going to be awesome or above and beyond excellent every single week. They don't need to be. You just need different guys who are feeling good, stepping up and outperforming their status quo. And someone like Dimitri Vaimunga did it against the Storm. I'm not expecting him to do it again against the Titans. because he doesn't need to. Like, he just needs to do his job once again, coming up on Saturday against the Titans at Mount Smart Stadium. And Vaimonga, for example, he doesn't need to repeat that performance against the Titans. Just do your job and someone else will. Who's to say this is the game where Halasima has a few crazy plays, or maybe it's the game where Aaron Clark just dominates everything and he's the main focal point. There's so many different dudes chiming in, and it's a fantastic sign of depth, and it's also a sign of like the potential that some of these players have, but we can't expect it every single week, especially for some of those younger forwards.
But you don't have to expect it every week, do you? If you've got enough guys that when someone's on an off day, someone else is on an on day, and you share the responsibility around, you share the kind of reliability around, you just different fellas each week makes for a team that can absorb those kind of things. You're not relying on like this one guy has to be awesome or else we don't have a chance. Having said that, am I right in saying Luke Metcalf rushed back from a broken leg and doesn't play a sort of tune-up game in New South Wales Cup, comes straight into the first team, loses both games? Has Chanel Harris-Tavita, he's played the other 4 games, is it, as Tanaboy's halves partner, and they've won all 4 of them, is that right?
I think it's 3.
3. Right, because he has been off I think he did play in at least one of the games that Metcalf was there, right? Just off the bench, or
yeah, he was on the bench. He didn't get game time
right.
in some of those games. Let me double check. He only played like 9 minutes in one of them. So he's been a reserve in 2 games. He played 80 minutes against the Roosters, 9 minutes against the Raiders, and then he won against the Storm. Someone on Twitter did try to correct me and say he was 4-0 this season instead of 3-0. And in my mindfulness, I just thought to myself, you're wrong. Because it is 3-0, and I didn't feel the need to respond because that's not what we do. But he played 3 games so far, 80 minutes in 2 of them, 9 minutes against the Raiders. So he's 3-0, but let's say 2.5-0. 2.5,
right.
And like, he didn't play 40 minutes for the 0.5. He played 9 minutes, but I'm being generous to Chanel.
Yeah, well, they were winning minutes, weren't they? So, and one of their best performances as well. So that's, yeah, interesting. And then that's kind of it's not the only example, because there's the Leatawa dropping to reserve grade for a bit as well, where I think, is he just undefeated this year? Because they started winning when he went and played New South Wales Cup.
I think I wrote, but I can't remember off the top of my head. I think he's 6-0 across the top 2 grades this season.
Right. So for all the talk that people, but I keep seeing, and I know you've mentioned it as well, that you keep seeing of like, apparently he's a bad defender, but also apparently he wins every game he plays. So I don't know. I think sometimes you just got to lean on the overall result and not think too deeply about the intricacies, if the overall picture is working. And he's been winning a lot of games. But Metcalf was kind of like the poster boy of the why are you changing a winning team type situation. Once they lost anyway. If they'd won, no one would have cared. It would have just been part of the evolution of the season. But there it is. Webster does seem to have a little bit, because we've seen a little bit of this before in the past, where he can be not to a Giancarlo Italiano extent, but he can be a little bit of a tinkerer at times with some of the changes. Whereas, I don't know, like the opposite of Italiano is Steve Corica, who's just going to pick an unchanged 11 if they win the week before, and he's going to make a lot of changes if they lose the week before. Don't know what he's going to do after a draw. We'll find out that next week. At the moment, injuries are dictating what they do at Auckland FC. But interesting little roller coaster, hasn't it been, of the season so far, where they have had that little bit where it's like they start so well and then they have a couple pretty poor performances that align with perhaps unnecessary changes to the team. Well, those guys come back in and then they do like performance of the season, beating the Storm in Melbourne was unreal. And it's just not just like they put up points on them. They didn't just grind out like a 13-12 win and kick a field goal at the end. Like they put 38 points on the Melbourne Storm in Melbourne, which is crazy, even if Melbourne have been shipping a few more points lately than quite a few more points lately than they usually do. But I think everyone who watched that game will probably say like the thing that stood out even more than their ability to convert opportunities into points on the boards to get over the line, score those tries, was just like the brutality of that performance as well. And Harris Tavita had a big part to play in that. The forward pack across the board had a big part to play in that. Like they didn't just beat them, they beat them up. And other than the Penrith Panthers, I can't remember the last time I saw that happen to the Melbourne Storm,
And it was a good defensive performance with a few different combinations. So it's less about the combinations and the systems. It's more about just like pure effort and intensity, because Tuivasa and Sheck and Khan Pereira, I don't think they've defended alongside each other ever before in an NRL game. So that's not a recipe for good defense, right? Like Leotawa's done his job. He's had a few games alongside Watene-Zelezniak, so that's been there before. You've got Laban and Niokore shuffling through edge forward positions, and you've had the chopping and changing in the halves as well. So the Warriors have been pretty good defensively. Well, they were good defensively against the Storm because of their intensity, because of their attitude, because of their ruthlessness, which is all Fisher-Harris type of things. And when they're winning, they're scoring a lot of points. They've played 6 games and they've got a points differential of 76 this season. Let me check where they were at after 6 games last season. 6 games, negative 18 points differential. So they've gone from negative 18 after 6 games to 76. So not only do we have the defensive foundations that were evident against the Storm, and we've seen them in a few other games as well, but the ability to score points. Let's go last season when Luke Metcalf, he was the Dally M favourite during the start of the season for the Warriors, and the Warriors, well, after 6 games, they were negative 18 or 16. They weren't necessarily scoring a lot of points. And now we've got Jackson Ford leading the Dally M's. He's going to win the Dally M, Jackson Ford, which would be a craziest thing in the world. But for all the hype around Luke Metcalf, the Warriors are attacking better right now this season without him, but also they're attacking better compared to when they were winning games last season, which I find interesting. I don't care about discussions about the future of the halves combination and all of that, but I do find it interesting that the Warriors are an excellent attacking team right now, not only with a few different combinations in their team, but also without the person who everyone thought was one of the best attacking halves in the NRL last season. Well, he's been replaced by Tanner Boyd, and Tanner Boyd's looking pretty good. So is Chanel Harris-Tavita. Chanel Harris-Tavita is just an NRL number 6. I don't really understand anything less than that. I don't know how it's like keeping the Blackcaps comparisons going. There's some dudes who are just Blackcaps now. Right? They weren't Blackcaps 6 months ago. And they're Blackcaps right now because they've played for the Blackcaps, they've done a job for the Blackcaps, and they are international cricketers for New Zealand. Chanel Harris-Tavita is just an NRL number 6. I don't think he's gone anywhere backwards from that. Sure, he might be a utility for Samoa. That's International Rugby League. That's where you get in, where you fit in. And if Samoa have 2 excellent halves and Chanel Harris-Tavita is the best person to do the utility job, that's where he's going to fit in. It's the same with Tanner Boyd. If Tanner Boyd's winning games as an NRL halfback, how can he go backwards from that? Because there's a pretty Tanner Boyd with the Warriors, he dominated New South Wales Cup. He dominated reserve grade with the state championship as well. Now he's winning NRL games. How do these players go backwards from these situations? The only way they go backwards is if they start playing bad. I don't think I've ever really seen Chanel Harris-Tavita play bad as a number 6. Like, have shockers. Compared to your Dragons halves, he's way better than those two. Both of whom have played number 6.
And both have played 7 this season.
Yeah, but I'm talking Harris-Tavita as a number 6. So as a number 6, he's better than both Dragons halves as 6s. And he, to me, he's just the best number 6 at the Warriors. And there's different ways you can play rugby league and how your halves, how they share the workload and the roles, but I've never really seen Harris-Tavita have a shocker at number 6, and he's a winning player. He does winning things that help the team and help the team defeat the Melbourne Storm. Now they're going to come up against the Titans, and the Titans had a big win over the Eels because Te Huranui Apanui Twaidl was not playing for the Eels, and the Titans are fast. The Titans are going to move the ball. Keanu Kinney is Taintua Piki, but better. The Warriors did take some speed from the Titans because Cam Pereira is now with the Warriors. But the Titans are still going to play vibrant attacking footy with their speed and offloads and shift in the footy, which troubled the Eels. And the only way to stop that for the Warriors is to smash them. Like, if the Warriors have the same defensive style against the Titans as they did against the Melbourne Storm, I think they win quite easily because they're going to be dominating the collision, putting players on their back, and the Titans won't be able to get that ruck speed to be able to shift the footy and give Keanu Kinney space. So, that's what the Warriors need to do. And we have the reason I try to stay as present as possible, especially in life, but especially with the Warriors in the NRL. Can the Warriors repeat that this weekend? Who cares about 6 months from now? Can the Warriors serve up another brutal defensive display on home turf against a team where you need to dominate them physically, or else they're going to get funky with their attack? Can they repeat that against the Titans? In theory, if you do it against the Melbourne Storm in Melbourne, you should be able to do it against the Titans. But the Titans they've won at Mount Smart before. The Titans have put 66 points or whatever on the Warriors. And the Warriors have also shown that they cannot maintain that level of performance this season, let alone the 25 years plus of their existence. So that is the biggest challenge for the Warriors right now, is whether they can repeat that. And I think this matchup specifically, they desperately need to repeat that because of how the Titans play their footy.
Yeah, I still can't get over that stat about the fact that last year to this year at the same point in the season, they've, what do you say, minus 18 to plus 76 in points differential with the same record. They were 4-2 at the same point in both of those seasons. And the two teams that beat them last year, the reason why they had a negative points differential is because they got thrashed by the Raiders in Vegas and got thrashed by the Storm in Melbourne. And they've not only beaten both of those two teams this year within their 4-2 record this time around, but they thrashed them both, including beating Melbourne comfortably in Melbourne, scene of the crime last time, you know?
Let's have a little dose of mindfulness.
Yeah, let's do that. And here is a zinger from a fella called Francois de la Rochefoucauld, who was a French author who died of gout in the 1600s. So not a great start for him. Well, I guess not a great end for him. But prior to that, he did say this. He said, nearly all of our faults are more forgivable than the means we use to hide them?
The first thing that comes to mind is you got to forgive yourself.
Of course.
Which is and because if you can't forgive yourself for your faults, why would anyone else forgive you for your faults? So if you
that's where the covering up of your faults comes from, isn't it? Is because you can't forgive them for yourself, therefore you feel the need to hide them from others.
Like gout.
Like gout, yeah. Well,
because if you aren't aware of your faults as a human being that lead to you getting gout, and then you keep trying to cover up your gout, you're going to have problems. But if you start getting gout and you realize and you accept that you've been eating some bad food and you haven't been moving your body, or whatever other factor goes into gout, and you don't see it, forgive yourself. Because let's say overeating. You're overeating for a reason, probably because you're unhappy, so forgive yourself. You made a mistake. It's all good. That's one of your faults. You forgive yourself. Then you can start taking steps to fix your gout. Now, unfortunately, that joker didn't do anything to fix his gout, which, you say 16th century or something?
Died in 1680, so I don't know what the medical science was like back in those days, where he might have had an uphill struggle.
1968.
No, 1680.
1680, right. Yeah, that sounded better. He was obviously eating. And the joker who shared that mindfulness with, not you, but the guy who created that mindfulness for us today, he wasn't aware of his faults, let alone forgiving himself for his faults. And that might have been a good place for him to start, but it's also a good place for us to start here today and forgive ourselves for our faults. But first you need to be aware of them, and awareness is the key to everything. Yes. And if you don't have awareness of your thoughts, if you don't have awareness of your body, your mind, body, and soul, then you're going to get gout. Then you're going to be sad. Then you're going to be angry. So you need some awareness, but then the next level from awareness is being able to forgive yourself. And if you can forgive yourself, others are going to be able to forgive you, but also you can forgive others, which I think is a very powerful force on planet Earth. So is gout.
Well, if you don't forgive others, then that's also one of your faults that you're probably going to be chasing by making further mistakes on top of your initial mistakes. It's funny how those things have a compounding effect, the way that Monsieur Le Rochefoucauld did say prior to dying of gout. He did at least come up with that superb perception of the issue at hand. Unfortunately, the doctors didn't help him out. I'm not sure how old he was. He might have died at gout of like 85 or something, in which case that's not such
that's a...
Right. So 66. Yeah, for the 1600s, that's an okay run.
Yeah, and especially in that time frame, in that period, that's like, don't want to judge him too harshly, but let's do some basketball here. The WNBA draft is that happening today?
Today, yeah, very shortly, in like an hour after we finish recording this, probably.
She, of course, won the NCAA championship in the country of wars with UCLA, and she was not good enough to be invited to the NBA draft, WNBA draft, but she will be picked in the WNBA draft. And of course, we're going to get over our Aotearoa insecurities here with the fact that the one player from New Zealand did not get invited to the WNBA draft when all of her teammates of the same championship winning team did, which is to tell us that Charlisse Leger-Walker is not as good or as important as those other players. But we'll just chill out with some mindfulness and celebrate the fact that she will be drafted at some point. Epic couple of weeks for Charlisse Leger-Walker. She's been doing it for a while. I think, who was her first team?
Washington State, the
Then
Cougars.
she moved to UCLA. I assume and imagine that she would have had a few different roles with those teams and how she played her basketball, which probably sets her up well for the WNBA. Who else? Who on the men's side did something in the NCAA championships?
Well, it depends what you mean by did something, because Oscar Goodman won a championship, but he won a championship as in his first year of playing, and he didn't play in the final, and he only played like, very sparing kind of garbage time minutes throughout the playoff run to that point. But like that was his first season of college basketball. So hey, this was with Michigan. So Jack Salt was the first New Zealander to win a national title in basketball. That was with Virginia in 2019. And like Charlisse Leger-Walker, he was a senior. That was his last year of college, and he managed to go out on a high. And he was a starting player all the way through that season up until they got to the national tournament, and then they dropped him to the bench, and he became sort of like just a culture setter, a big man, old-fashioned center. So like someone who'd come on, give you 10, 15 good minutes off the bench, particularly defensive rebounding kind of priorities, but they kept the shooters on through most of the things. So he kind of had a lesser role during the run, but was a senior player who was very, one of their team captains, very highly regarded as a culture setter within that team. Same deal with Charlisse Leger-Walker, but she was also a starter throughout the run. Maybe the least pedigreed of the, not pedigreed, but like the starter who averaged the fewest points throughout the championship, but also someone who influence on the court was pretty massive in all those games, and it goes far beyond the points that she scored. And she's just like you said, is a very different role to what she used to do at Washington State, where she was the star player. She was the big fish in a small pond, and she she'd have massive scoring nights, 30 plus, big volume kind of shooting, expected to be someone who was going to lead the way for that team. Going to UCLA, everyone's a star player. They had 6 seniors in their thing, and they scored all their points through the semi-final and the final, those 6 seniors between them. And yeah, 5 of them got invited to the WNBA draft, and Charlisse Leger-Walker was the leftover one. But that kind of doesn't mean anything, because that's just the official invites to make sure those players are there. She's still going. Like she traveled to New York with all the rest of her teammates, and to her coach, and to some of the teammates who aren't getting drafted, and a lot of the staff. I think they brought their whole staff except for the one guy who's in charge of player recruitment, because he has to go and replace 6 senior players who are all going to the WNBA draft. So they're going to have a completely different team next year. But they sort of made a big team event out of it to celebrate. Yes, we won a national championship, but then here is also another aspect of that, as we get to see the further success of these players. So they've made a big deal about that, and going to have a big old party there with all those players, and she's right there and amongst it, as she would have been had she been invited. So nothing actually changes. And I am sneakily waiting to see if she gets drafted ahead of maybe some of those other 5. And I've got the list of the other 10 players from other schools. I would not be surprised if she gets in ahead of 1 or 2 of them as well. Like, I think there's every chance she could be a first-round pick, for the reason that the role she played at UCLA was far less flashy than what she did at Washington State, but arguably also way more indicative of the type of role she would be asked to do if she were playing for a WNBA team, right? Well, she's not going to be the star player there either. She's going to be someone who has to facilitate, be a good passer, be someone who isn't going to make many mistakes, who is a highly intelligent player on the court, who can dictate things, probably with like a bench unit coming on as in limited minutes. So you just got to be sharp, you got to be active. You don't necessarily get opportunities to make up for your mistakes if you're not playing a lot. So you got to earn everything you get. And she's that type of player who, I think, there's a great quote that I had in the newsletter from her coach, where she said that she thought that what she called Charlisse Leger-Walker, she's expecting her to be the steal of the draft, but she said something specifically. Here, she said she might be one of the most pro-ready players on our team. Basketball IQ wise, how she processes, how she connects the team, what she understands, her ability to take what I'm asking for, translate it to the team in a way that really brings them together. She's one of the top 5 locker room players I've ever coached. So whatever WNBA team gets her, they're very, very smart. I think she's going to be the steal of the draft, which is great when someone who's just won a national title as a coach says something that I was kind of thinking, but in my ignorance, not as confident of being able to say this as someone who was, far more educated on the matters. That's nice to hear. Like that's good to hear that my inklings of actually Charlisse Leger-Walker, I think this style of player is going to suit the professional ranks and the role that she's had to play at UCLA, which she's very willingly played at UCLA, is especially going to put her in better stead, perhaps than players who are stars at the college level, and that doesn't translate when you get to the WNBA, when everything is tougher and more physical and faster and stronger. And there are always players who struggle to make that step up. Charlisse Leger-Walker, a lot of the things when I've looked at like mock drafts and things, when the critique of her seems to be that like she doesn't have a lot more upside. She kind of is the player already that she's going to be in the professional ranks, which to me doesn't sound like a bad thing at all. That sounds like a perfect thing. And I get if you're a team that has been losing a lot and you want to try to find that sort of that franchise altering player, you're going to go for the high upside pick. You're going to go for someone who in a couple of years time is going to be the best possible version. If you're a good team that's trying to win a championship right now though, and you just want some depth on your bench, Charlisse Leger-Walker can come in and be like a contributor the day she walks into the arena, and I suspect the professional scouts probably know what they're doing, and I'd imagine that's the type of thing that certainly some of those teams later in the first round in particular are going to be looking for. So I've got some expectations on how that might go, but one way or another, there's 45 players who get picked in the WNBA draft. She's going somewhere. She's going to get an opportunity to at least try and earn a spot in the dub. And if she manages that, if she gets on the court in a proper game, she will only be New Zealand's second ever WNBA player, following on from Megan Compain. I think 5th overall if you count NBA. We've had Stephen Adams, Sean Marks, Kirk Penny on the other side of it. I think that's everyone. So it's not a long list. She's already on a very short list of New Zealanders who have won championships at the NCAA level. Should hopefully become a member of a very small select group of New Zealanders who have played at the highest level in the professional ranks, and doing both of those things maybe within a week, and from winning the title to winning to hopefully getting drafted. Like that's a crazy sequence of events.
I do appreciate your American basketball buzzwords that you dropped throughout that spiel. So
most of them were in a quote. I did, I'm hamstrung there, but yeah,
high upside and all this type of stuff.
Sure,
so
yeah.
We'll ground it back in Aotearoa, which is a far better place to be than America, where we do have the New Zealand NBL. It has started, and only one team has played twice so far. That's the Manawatu Jets. They've got 2 losses. Wellington, Taranaki, Otago, Tuatara, Tauranga Whai, and Canterbury Rams all have 1 win so far in the NBL. I'm looking at the average point leaders here as per the NZ-NBL website, and there's a few funky names who hit 30 points in the first game. Ruben Tarangi didn't have his best NBL season for the Breakers, but he dropped 35 for the Tauranga Whai, as did Tane Murray, a younger point guard. Is he associated to an NBL team, an Australian NBL team?
Yeah, Brisbane Bullets, coming off his first, not his first NBL season because he was a development player with the Breakers before he went to college, but that was his first year in the senior roster, and he was pretty good for the Bullets too, and he was amazing. It was 30 points, wasn't it? Playing alongside Ruben Tarangi, and I think, was it 7 out of 10 from 3 points? Like that's, some serious sharpshooting.
And also Sam Timmins, the big man for the Southland Sharks, 30 points in his first game of the season. If we're talking basketball, that also means we have to talk about Carlin Davison, who's moved from Taranaki to Wellington. And because for the last few years, we've seen like, okay, Cullen Davison loves a dunk, right? Like that starts to emerge in the NBL. Then we see Cullen Davison start to shoot a few 3-pointers. And that's interesting because that's, as you're saying, when you're dropping all the American lingo, that's something that does translate to a higher level. Like you got to play your role. Cullen Davison's not going to go from the NZ-NBL to the Australian NBL and doing all the stuff he does in the NZ-NBL. He's going to do that all in the Australian NBL. No, he's going to play his role for his team. And for someone like him, that role previously with the Breakers, I think, that would have been, you're going to sit out there, you're going to shoot some threes, you're going to score a couple of dunks, and you're going to be a high energy bench player. Sixth man, maybe. But now we're seeing Cullen Davison continue to grow his skill set. Maybe that was the reason why he went to Wellington. I don't know how the financials and all that stuff works, but it looks like he's like the big dog for Wellington Saints. And if big Donny for the Wellington Saints, you're a big Donny in New Zealand basketball, basically. And in that first game for the Wellington Saints, he had 19 points, 9 assists, 7 rebounds, shot a couple of 3-pointers, 42%, 43% 3-pointers, made his no free throws, so area of improvement. But my point is that it's a nice, well-rounded skill set for Cullen Davison. And I'm curious how he goes in the NBL this season now with the new team, because Taranaki, like him and his sister, Tiana Davison, who plays for the Kiwi Ferns, they're Taranaki hardcore. So it's a big move for Cullen Davison going for, like, obviously they move around all sorts of teams, but he's going from Taranaki, where his whānau are illustrious athletes. They are among the best sporting whānau in New Zealand. If Cullen Davison's playing professional basketball, and I think he's played for the Tall Blacks before, Tiana Davison is one of the best Kiwi Ferns players, let alone forwards, playing for the Knights in the NRLW. But he's made a move to Wellington, which I can't imagine too many Taranaki fans are pleased with. But it's an interesting little spot for him, because we're now seeing like he's moving through his career, and he's now at the point where he's going to be doing everything. Like he was already showing signs of that in the New Zealand NBL for a while, but he's going to be the main man for Wellington unless I'm missing out on some imports and stuff like that. He's going to get a lot of touches. He's going to be shooting a lot. He's going to be dunking a lot. He's going to be passing a lot. And he's going to be doing all the defensive stuff that he needs to do as a Kiwi basketball player as well.
Yeah, their imports do look pretty good. Very early days, but who else have they got? Jordan Hunt's there. Sam Gold is there. Isaiah Liafa, when he comes back from injury, is there for Wellington. So, yeah, I'm tempted to say like the Taranaki to Wellington move is kind of like Charlisse Leger-Walker from Washington State to UCLA, but I don't think it is, because I think Davison's just going from being star player in Taranaki to one of the star players for Wellington. The difference is that he goes from a Taranaki team that's probably fighting to make the finals, to get into the semis, versus a Wellington Saints team that is, defending champions, aren't they? And expecting to win again, as they expect to win all the time. The win-loss record is going to look a bit different for him this year, but I don't know that the stat line will look that much different. I think he's just going to do the same thing he's been doing the last couple of years with Taranaki, the same kind of, triple-double threat every time he plays, dunks over and over. But of course, it does take on a bit of significance if you're doing it for a team at the top of the table, I guess.
I don't think we've got like a high concentration of the youngsters in action. There's a few different basketball things happening. Like I did see, there was a 3-on-3 tournament. Tetuhi Lewis, I've seen him play NBL for a bit. He was playing for that 3-on-3 competition.
Won the Asia Cup, yeah, the 3x3 guys.
There you go. I imagine they'll be coming back into the NBL, as well as the random invitational tournament thing that was happening that Jackson Ball was playing in, another exceptional young talent. So between those two things, you'll probably see a few more youngsters enter the NBL, but based on what you saw from the opening round, is there any youngster who stands out who was involved in the NBL opening exchanges?
Was there anyone that I had on that list of things in the newsletter? They're all more or less international players. Dante Russo-Nance probably still counts as a young player.
Well, Tane Murray, Dante Russo-Nance, they're both point guards on the rise in New Zealand basketball. Like, they're not starting playing big minutes in the Australian NBL, but they're two good guards to watch out for in the emerging bracket. Like, they're not 19, they're not Jackson Ball 17, 18 years old, but they are younger guards to watch out for.
Yeah, definitely in the Australian context when they get back to that. Although I'm not sure if Russo-Nance is under contract. They might actually be something that puts his season under a bit more emphasis as well, is that he's sort of had a couple of setbacks on the way up along. Like, it hasn't been steady going for him at Perth Wildcats. He was, expected to move into a full-time roster spot in his second year, I think, and then they kicked it down the line and said, oh, we'll wait till next year. We'll keep you as a DP for another season. Last year, he did move up to a full roster spot, started the first few games, didn't hold on to that spot. By the end of it, he's not actually playing that much. So I don't know if they would re-sign him, which puts him in an interesting spot, especially playing for Manawatu, his second year in a row there. But he had Corey Webster with him last year. And Corey Webster is re-signed and will hopefully play at some point during the season, but he is coming off a long-term injury. So certainly at the start of the season, Russo-Nance is going to be expected to carry a fair bit of the load for them. They did lose twice on the weekend, so that wasn't amazing, but he had 18 points in the first game. The list I'm looking for with the super youngsters, and Jackson Ball, I don't even know, even though his age says yes, I don't even know that he should be in that kind of category because he was an established star player last season. Preparing to go to college next season in the USA or later this year, where he will link up with Hayden Jones, which will be very cool. But that list from that under-18s tournament that they just went to in Germany, where they finished 7th overall, went 4-3 from their 7 games, pretty good, like playing against good established nations. That's got a bunch of players there who are going to go from that back into New Zealand NBL. So like Harry Townsend with Otago, Hunter Saville with Franklin, Arana Robertson is someone I've seen his name a few times with Wellington Saints. Harry Kelso, Franklin Bulls, Joshua Kelly, Tauranga Whai, Hunter Johns, Auckland Tuatara, Cole Hopoi, younger brother of Kara Hopoi, who's made the next guy after Carlin Davison coming through, who just like jumps like he's on a trampoline. He was in a few of those star teams alongside Jackson Ball that did really well at age grade tournaments, World Cups recently. Aubrey Chunga from Wellington Saints. Jackson Ball himself is going to go and play for the Hawke's Bay Hawks, at least for the start of the season. Cooper Adams with Nelson. So like a bunch of that team who are all born in 2008. So all of them are 17, 18 years old. Most of them are contracted with NBL teams. And I would imagine, especially if they get back pretty soon, which they should, because that tournament's done now, like they're probably going to be available next week. Like this is that little window at the start of the season where some of the imports haven't arrived. Some of the New Zealand professionals who have overseas contracts, they haven't arrived yet. It's a bit like a Blackcaps tour in Bangladesh. So you've got the opportunities maybe for some of those guys. Even Jackson Ball benefited from that last year, right? When he had like a 40-pointer in his second game or something. He was scoring all over the show, just dominating games at the start of the season when I think he was still like 16 at that point. And then from there, he's able to roll that into consistent minutes throughout the rest of the season with Hawke's Bay and everything he's done since then with New Zealand under-19s and playing in the Aussie NBL and getting his scholarship to go to Wisconsin. Like, I don't think we'll see anyone do that because Jackson Ball is pretty special. But there are opportunities to earn like minutes moving forward in this first kind of little month window, and those guys are the guys who, by virtue of being in a pretty good under-18s team, like those are names I've got highlighted now. Those are names I'm looking for in box scores and like team lineups and stuff like that for the next few weeks.
And this is a heavy duty theme for the niche cage because the youngsters are crazy. Like whether it's Te Horonui Apanui Twiddle, Antonio Verhoeven, Mason Barber might debut soon for the Cowboys, let alone the fact that you got 17-year-olds, three 17-year-olds playing reserve grade for the Warriors, the young cricketers, the young footballers, the young basketballers. Like there's that magical number of 17. Visilic for Auckland FC, 17 years old, right? Bishop Neal, Warriors reserve grader, 17 years old. These young folks are awesome at their sports, and because we're the niche case, we focus our energy on 4 sports, and it's the same thing for every sport. And this will shake up New Zealand sports moving forward. You're seeing it be reported like you're getting more young Kiwis playing NCAA, so you're seeing those type of stories reported. But compared to rugby union, compared to netball, the young talent in these other sports that we cover are off the charts. And you're going to see that in the NBL. So make sure you're tapped in, tuned in to the New Zealand NBL, because this is where you see the youngsters who have already done stuff for New Zealand basketball that has never been done before. You're going to see them playing in Aotearoa, and if you're in the regions and you want to watch them, like these are good little entertaining games to go watch. Like it's all very community based, it's all very regional based. There's teams throughout Aotearoa, and as we saw, like Southland Sharks going to the final last year, I think. Stuff like, do they still have the same coach?
I haven't got it written down, but I would imagine so. Like if he wants to stay, he's going to have the job right after winning a title. They do still have Takaha Cooper, Breakers development player. I see him on their list. Sam Timmins is playing for them.
I think we did discuss that because I think he's from Kaikoui.
Yes.
And Mason Barber, future NRL debutant this season, I believe, with the Cowboys, he's from Kaikoui as well. And I do think that Tukaha, I do believe he did have a little situation with the Aotearoa vitamins, so even more respect to Tukaha Cooper. Let's check in with football. We do have the Football Ferns. They're going through their, is it World Cup qualification, Oceania stuff happening here?
Yep, that's exactly what it is. Final on Wednesday after winning 5-0 against Fiji, and the semi-final previous international window was when they did all the group stage stuff where they also won 3 games without conceding a goal and scoring plenty of them.
So yes, the Football Ferns should win these games. They should win these games convincingly, but the thing with New Zealand football, All Whites, Football Ferns, and all the junior teams is we represent the Oceania region, so we need to make sure we're big upping all the Oceania football teams, and that means doing your best at these type of tournaments and not taking the piss, and that's exactly what the Football Ferns are doing. It's what the Football Ferns will be doing. So they got one more game on Wednesday against
Papua New Guinea, who slightly surprisingly beat American Samoa in the semi-final. I thought that American Samoa team looked very good, but they're very good defensively, and maybe just they couldn't find a goal and they lost 1-0. So shout out to Papua New Guinea. That is a good win from them, and it means that, I mean, this might apply to us instead if they turn us over in the final. We never count your chickens. But it is an automatic spot to the World Cup for the winner of this game. The loser, though, by virtue of making the final, still goes through into the intercontinental playoffs, which are slightly different to what they used to be when the All Whites had to go through it, where it was just like a one-off or a two-legged game against another team. It's now sort of like little mini tournaments around the place, which we just saw a bunch of them on the men's side. In the most recent window there, they were taking place then. And yeah, the runner-up from Oceania will get entry into that. So New Caledonia from the men's side had to play against Jamaica in there, and they played pretty well. They lost, but they put a good showing through. So at the very least, that is on offer for Papua New Guinea, or maybe for us if they turn us over and beat us in the final. Maybe we'll have to go there. But it does mean that it's not over the World Cup chances for the other team from this tournament, which is cool to see, especially because like part of us doing our thing for the islands is being there and setting a standard and saying like this is It's not always the best thing for Football Ferns, but that's in like going between playing much better teams to playing much worse teams, but it is the necessity. Like you got to do that. You got to have some respect for the region, and the region gives you your automatic spot to the World Cup. So the least you can do is go to like turn up and do your bit to get there. But it can be, I think, tough for some of those other nations who turn up being like, well, New Zealand's just going to win. What's the chance? So having like that runner up at least get a playoff opportunity on the end of it is quite good as well. I like that that's the case.
Did Chris Wood play for Nottingham Forest on the weekend?
He played twice for Nottingham Forest on the weekend.
Ooh.
He came, well, I was going to say, he came off the bench in their Premier League game against Aston Villa on Monday morning, played like 20 odd minutes, and they were probably the best 20 minutes that Forest played during that game as they were chasing a winner. They didn't get it, but he definitely just gave them a bit of presence and a bit of confidence. And then I loved seeing afterwards, like he's one of the last players off the pitch. You can probably still see him over my shoulder on the video. I'm not sure if he's one of those guys, but he might have been because he was out there for a long time clapping all the Forest fans and really like loving his first home game back. But that was about 4 days after he'd also played the first half of a Europa League quarterfinal in Portugal away against Porto. So they didn't just rush him back for that game. They rushed him into the starting lineup. Only played him 45 minutes because, of course, the conditioning's not there. But they got a 1-1 draw away. They kind of got battered in that game. They were by far the second best team, but they came out of it with a 1-1 draw away, which puts them in a very good position to try and win the home leg on Friday to make it into a Europa League semi-final. So Chris Wood has turned up just in time to help Nottingham Forest hopefully avoid relegation. I think the way they've played the last couple of weeks is starting to show that they should be good enough to do that as long as they don't have another dip off. And him is like such a boost to them just from that stake. But they're also trying to win a European competition. And they're halfway through a quarterfinal, which is now quite nicely poised for them. So there's that as well to play for. Like really significant time for Chris Wood to get back. Let alone we don't even have to worry down the line about World Cup ramifications or anything like that. He's got plenty to gain for just for the next few weeks playing for Nottingham Forest. So big yarns from there. And the fact that not only did he get rushed in, but straight like his first game back, he's into the starting lineup. Little bit of Luke Beckhoff about that, perhaps, but they did only give him 45 minutes, and he was a little bit rusty, but he got minutes in the league
for the under-21s.
He did play a game for under-20. You're exactly right. He did, and he scored. He actually played 2 games for them. The one was behind closed doors, so there's no video of it or anything like that. And there might have even been other like unofficial training type games, and because there was an international break in that time. So yeah, he did get a tune-up. You're right.
Luke Metcalf did not play any.
And Metcalf had no tune-ups. Yeah.
I do see
Chris
here
Wood didn't lose any of those games too. So
yes, that's true. I do see here. So Nottingham Forest is 16th, 33 points. I think it's bottom 3 teams get relegated. So they're on 33 points. West Ham's on 32, and then the most powerful, iconic Premier League club who will tour New Zealand for a historic fixture. Tottenham.
Wrexham coming back. Okay.
Yeah, Tottenham are on 30 points. That's the relegation battle there because Burnley are on 20 points. Wolverhampton are on 17 points. So you got Nottingham Forest, West Ham, and Tottenham competing for the last relegation spot. Best case scenario, Tottenham gets relegated, because that will make everything else moving forward way more funnier if it is a championship club touring New Zealand, because we do know how Kiwis love their Premier League football clubs, even with no Aotearoa angle at all. And I will be giggling the whole time if Tottenham are a championship club going on a big world tour. And if that happens, it also means Nottingham Forest are not relegated. And that is what we want. And we want Chris Wood firing, obviously, with the World Cup. But as you said, Nottingham Forest have business of their own, fighting off relegation, competing in the Europa Cup.
Europa League, yeah. So the second of the 3 European competitions.
Right. So
the one that Spurs won last year, funnily enough.
Yeah. And I do remember they celebrated that pretty hardcore.
And Postecoglou, who then had a 40-day stint as the Nottingham Forest manager since then. So,
crikey, Jack, there's a lot of crossover between those 2 teams. very quickly, does the new coach, because Nottingham they're on their third coach this season.
Fourth, believe it or not. They went from Nuno
Nuno?
Espirito Santo, who I think also coached Spurs once upon a time. He leaves for non-footballing reasons because he just gets beef with the owner.
Yeah.
And also the transfer guy. Postecoglou comes in, only lasts 40 days and they don't win a game. And actually the last time Chris Wood played for Nottingham Forest was in the last game that Postecoglou was in charge for. So then Sean Dyche comes in, former Chris Wood boss at Burnley. And he's sacked before Chris Wood even comes back from his injury. Now they got Vitor Pereira, who actually, like I said before, like Forest have shown they've shown some signs even before Chris Wood came back. So it's a nice spot for him to return to. And yeah, this is their fourth coach of the year. I don't know if their team's ever avoided relegation going through 4 coaches in a year, but that's Nottingham Forest for you.
But my question is, does the new coach, the fourth coach, he's started Chris Wood, so he seems to like Chris Wood.
Yes, and when Chris Wood went on in the Villa game, he plays the last 20-odd minutes. About 10 minutes into that, Morgan Gibbs-White is subbed off. Morgan Gibbs-White, on his way off the pitch, takes off the captain's armband, gives it to Chris Wood. So Chris Wood has gone straight into the starting lineup for the first senior game that he's available for. And he also finished the second game that he played as the captain. So, yeah, I think it's very good signs for how Pereira is treating Wood, because, yeah, that can be a tricky one. That was a lot of the talk about when Postecoglou's in charge, is how is he going to fit Chris Wood into the way he likes to play. Well, it seems like having another Portuguese manager is hopefully going to be pretty fruitful for Chris Wood.
Righto, let's check in with the A-League, where we did have Wellington Phoenix losing to Melbourne City, but Auckland FC had a 2-2 draw against Victory. And this week, coming up, Phoenix are hosting the Wanderers, Auckland FC are hosting the Mariners, and we must be, no women's footy yet because the international window probably. Where do we begin? Where do we begin with the Wellington Phoenix men and Auckland FC? Let's start with the Wellington Phoenix men, because fair play to them. Like, I was having a joke that they were closer to the wooden spoon than making finals, and they were close to finals footy. They are now closer to finals footy than the wooden spoon, but I don't think they're going to be playing finals footy based on that game against Melbourne City. They probably had to win that game to keep themselves in the mix, and a
draw would have been okay, but a loss basically eliminates them.
And they didn't really do a whole lot in that game. Do have games to finish the season and stuff like that, but my Phoenix ideas are all around assessing Chris Greenacre as the interim coach and the possible full-time coach for the Wellington Phoenix.
Yeah, Chris Greenacre. I mean, I said from the start that I don't think that he is, I said I thought he was a very, the exact right candidate for the interim job, but I've also tried to keep a distinction between what an interim coach has to do and what a permanent coach has to do. And I've never felt like Greenacre was the best option for the full-time coach. But I think you alluded to this last time, and I completely agree. Like, if he had got to if he had taken this team from where they were into finals football, doesn't matter what I think, they were going to give him that contract. Now we're in an interesting spot where it's like he's got them close. He's improved them. He had 3 wins in a row. Chiefy never did that during the course of the season, never had that kind of consistent win to win. He didn't win back. I don't think he won consecutive games at any point this season. He did not. He no longer has a job. And that was enough to get them in the mix, but it also required, with the fixtures that they had remaining, it required them to be able to not just get that win against Melbourne Victory away, but also to back it up against Melbourne City straight after. It's like you haven't won there at that ground for 2017, something like 8-9 years, something like in that range. And you got to try and get consecutive results there. It's hard enough to get the one, and I can't help but feel like it's certainly too much to hold it against Chris Greenacre that he hasn't gotten the team into the finals, because they weren't looking anywhere close to that when he took over. So he has improved them. That's where it gets into this like no man's land. He hasn't done enough to where it's like, well, there's no doubt that they're gonna kick on from this and keep him on full time. But he has gotten them a bit better, and he's gotten them better through the ways that I thought would be obvious well, not obvious, but I thought would be the things he would do a first game he takes over. Straight after that 5-0 loss to Auckland, he comes in midweek, thought, well, what are you going to do to fix this team? Well, first thing you want to do is shake off what came before, so change the team a little bit. Put a couple guys in who are hungry and feel like they have a point to prove, maybe drop one or two guys that didn't play very well the last week, and get rid of the back three, because they're just, it's not that it's caused more problems, it's that it was a specific Chiefy thing. So if Chiefy's not pushing that, Greenacre's not going to be pushing all the little, the intricate instructions that come with that. So just get rid of it entirely and simplify your plan. 4 at the back, probably 4 in midfield, 2 up front, or 4-3-3, whatever it takes. But like just something that is nice and stable that the players will be able to just fall into without having to think too much. Because we know the issue with Italiano's football where it started to get astray was when it got too tinkery. And Greenacre's best attribute there is that he could just come in and be like an old pro and just we'll keep it simple and just put in a big effort and see how that is. His team did that for him over those 3 wins. Not as much against Melbourne City. I think they fell off a little bit there. Wasn't the best performance, but they had moments, spells within that, even though I don't think they actually had a shot on target in that game. Where it comes back to me is those first 2 games where there was the loss at home against Sydney, especially. Draw against Adelaide away is all right. That's another tough place to go. But losing 1-0 at home to Sydney in that first game where he just picked the same team, except for it was either Roof or Eze was suspended, one of the two. It's the only change he made. That just feels like you got so few games to work with. It's 8 games, I think he said. He's 6 in charge with 2 to go. Yeah, so 8 games to work with. And you kind of wasted the first one. You sort of wasted the second one, even though you did get a good point out of that. It just left too much work to do. So I haven't enjoyed that process, and I kind of felt like he just wasn't decisive enough when he could have at the start. And I don't know that that's the kind of trait I want to see in a full-time coach either. But he has done a good job since then. And this loss on the weekend doesn't change that. The fact that they won 3 on the trot before that, the fact that they got a win in Melbourne against Victory, which is a weird game because they were brilliant in the first half and didn't score a goal, got outplayed in the second half, but then scored it right at the end to win it anyway. So yeah, take them however you can get them. That was a good victory under any circumstances, but it just feels like a lot of the stuff you can weigh up, like there's positives, but there's little things that are holding them back as well. And there's things like, Dan Edwards getting a good opportunity. He's played very well for them. That's been fun to watch. I think Paulo Retre is playing his best football at the moment in the midfield. Didn't see this version of him. I know he's injured for most of the season, but didn't see it in the run-in when he was coming back under Chiefy. He's playing better now. That Hughes Tuiloma centre-back pairing is doing pretty well. I love the fact that they're both great, goal threats going forward for set pieces. And I don't know that I think some of Rami Najarine's sort of recent form has been exaggerated a bit, but one thing you can't exaggerate is his corner kick deliveries are superb. And that's one of the reasons why Tuiloma and a bit of Hughes as well look like they could score anytime the Phoenix get those set pieces in attacking areas, but they're also not creating that much from open play. And a lot of it is kind of like it is a back to basics approach. Lump the ball forward to Corbin Piper, flick on, Eze running forward and trying to make things like it's not complicated football. It's what it needed to be at this stage, but I don't know if that's the kind of thing you build a team around moving forward. So my opinion on the Greenacre scenario for next season has not changed, but I don't make that decision, right? And I think, like I said, if he'd taken them to finals, I don't think there's any doubt he would have been given a contract. And so we're in a bit of a gray area there where what I think, I don't know what the Wellington Phoenix hierarchy think though.
And if he wins, if they win these next 2 games, it's only going to complicate things even further because are they ruled out of finals or they're still a mathematical?
mathematical chance, but they're 5 points behind Melbourne City with a much worse goal difference. So unless they can win some like 6, 7, 8-0 games over the next 2 weeks, they would need City to lose both of their games, and I think they'd need MacArthur to slip up as well. So it's asking a lot, and they have to win both games. Have to win both games. A draw and they're gone straight away.
Well, that starts this weekend against the Western Sydney Wanderers, who are bottom of the table. So we'll see how they go. I just don't get any like inspiration from Greenacre. I'm curious about Greenacre and Eiffel because Eiffel's been a very successful coach. Like when you're talking about Greenacre as a coach in the Phoenix system, you mapped out a few weeks ago how he hasn't actually been coaching winning teams, which is all right because maybe he's a development coach helping build the young talent at the Phoenix, but Eiffel wins stuff as coach. He's probably the most winningest coach in New Zealand football right now. And so maybe a Greenacre Eiffel type of combination could intrigue me, but Greenacre just doesn't give me any he doesn't get me up and excited about Phoenix football, especially with the players. And you mentioned this with Chiefy, like the players don't really match the style and stuff like that. Like Ize's a funky attacking player, but it's like, are we just going to keep having Corbin Piper as striker is basically the summary there. I think you can probably go out and find better strikers than Corbin Piper. I think that is a tame statement. That's not a hot take. That is very tame. That surely you can go out and buy, or in Brooke Smith. He's a better striker than Corbin Piper. Let's just be honest. So you already got one there. So you could do something like that. But I just don't really. The combination of some meh attack with a coach who's just a bit meh is an interesting place for the Phoenix to be right now. And I'm curious what they do moving forward because, as you've said, Greenacre is a good interim coach, and we need to see if he's got the real juice to be able to drive a program, drive a system in the same way that we are seeing with Auckland FC. And they had a draw against Melbourne Victory, a very good draw, I thought. Both goals came from the 17-year-old defender making mistakes. So it's not like Auckland FC were bad defensively and conceded 2 goals, but then responded to each goal by scoring a goal. And that was the stuff I've been thinking about with the Warriors. In their last 3 games, the 2 losses, they didn't respond. And then there was a good patch of storm footy, and the Warriors responded to that. They also responded to the 2 losses. Auckland FC responded to victory goals twice. And the first goal that Victory scored, Visilic, he went walkabouts. There was some, Victory. They've got all these players in movement and all this stuff. He was the right. They were playing formation chat. He was the right centre back in 3 centre backs, and he was on the left side of the field. That can't happen. You can't do that because then you're leaving.
It's a bit like a shift in the NRL where the centre commits in field to try and make a tackle. It's you can make that press, but you have to stop the ball from getting past you. You cannot let that ball get past you to the side you're leaving open. Which
might have been the Storm. I don't know, but there was a case where it was a centre or an edge forward. They push up, but in the rugby league instance, they push up and inside the line of the defenders, their own defenders. So if it goes edge forward, half centre, the centre has pushed up inside the line of the half. You can't do that. It's like sporting geometry. You just can't do that. And it's the same thing with what Visilic was doing. If he moves, so he's the right defender. If he moves so far left that he's on the left of Dan Hall and on the left of Nando Peinecker, you just can't do that. It's just geometry. because the angles and then the space you're leaving behind is going to be exploited. You can push up, but you got to stay in your channel. You can't get sucked in onto the other side of the field. That's a bit crazy, but he's 17 years old. And then he has a little mishap with a few touches. And I don't know, I kind of like Volupele. He's one of these A-League players.
Good player.
I see a lot of them and I like him. So shout out to Volupele. And he put Vislic under pressure. That's all good. That's just to say Victory scored 2 goals, both of which came from errors from the 17-year-old. So Auckland FC conceded 2 goals, but they weren't terrible. They weren't bad. The youngest player on the field just made a few understandable errors, and Auckland FC didn't shit the bed after that. After either of those errors, they responded with goals of their own. And there's been many of these games where Auckland FC, they might not win these games, and they're second on the ladder. I don't think they've got as many wins as they had last season, but they're finding a way to just get the job done as far as a draw. We don't lose this game, we fight back, we get a draw, because those draws, yes, you're not the Newcastle Jets who have 2 draws and 8 losses. Auckland FC have 8 draws and 5 losses. So there's different ways you can gather your points in like a long football season, because the draws, the wins and the losses have a different calculation to the NRL, for example, where a 1-point draw, no one really gives a shit. But a football draw is very important in these type of situations. They could have lost that game, and that would have been bad. Not detrimental, but it would have been bad. Instead, they find a way to get a draw, score 2 goals. Second goal was a Lachlan Brook free kick. First goal was what?
Koza. Sam Cosgrove scored it. I can't remember what the goal was. It was a scrappy little back and forth.
Yeah, that was an excellent finish from Cosgrove.
Yeah, it was a good finish.
My vision of Sam Cosgrove now is him ducking under headers.
Under headers, but with his shoulder leaning into the guy who he's competing with.
No. There was no defender around him against the Victory. He was on the back post. The ball's coming to him, and the ball goes over his head. Yes, of course, there's some instances where the ball's you misjudge the ball, but he puts his head forward and the ball goes over his head. It's there's a weird mix of Cosgrove being an excellent headerer, because they got that back post kind of strategy. You get the ball to him on the back post, he nudges it across. That's happened a few times this season, and it's good. But I think he is the most underwhelming headerer of a ball I've ever seen, for someone whose job is to be a good headerer. And that was on show, but he did score a goal with his feet, which was surprising as well. Very clinical finish from Sam Cosgrove. But ultimately, whether Sam Cosgrove is, regardless of how good or bad he is with his noggin, he does his job in a good team. And it's a very good team. And it's similar to what we're talking about, the Warriors and the Blackcaps. Auckland FC, Sakai was playing left back. And he was amazing. Sakai is one of my favorite footballers ever. It's Zidane, Sakai, someone else, I don't know. But it's that's what Sakai does. I've never seen Sakai lose a header. Sakai's a way better headerer than Sam Cosgrove, but he's also a phenomenal passer, and he's a big effort defender. So I love Sakai, but he was playing left back, and so Auckland FC, they've got this left back crisis. What do? You just put Sakai left back. It's all good. The depth conversation might be a little bit different, but yeah, you might be lacking left back depth, but you got Sakai, who does everything really, really well, and you can have a good performance with him at left back. And we also saw, I do want to make another point that as I watch more and more football this season, I'm getting into Callan Elliott. I don't know if I think Callan Elliott might be better than T-Pain. Like T-Pain, big effort, but he doesn't have the pizzazz that Callan Elliott has. Callan Elliott's faster. I think he's got a bit more skill. I like Callan Elliott, so I just want to throw that out there, especially with what I've been seeing from T-Pain for the Phoenix recently. But the other thing about Auckland FC that is aligned with this conversation about a wide range of players being used and young talent, not only did you have 17-year-old Visilic doing a job as a starting defender in the A-League, you also had Fitzharris.
Van the man.
Another young player who, he's not a local junior. It gets a bit complicated when you're dealing in the lower levels of football, because I think he's from Tauranga.
That is the one. He's one of many good young players who have come from Tauranga, including another one who also played off the bench in this game, Jonty Bidwa, who's also from there as well.
So the Auckland FC, it's what are we, 3/4 of the way through this season? A little bit more? They've been around for almost 2 seasons, and they already have a production line of young talent. It's already there. And we've talked, it's again, the football things like, is the reserves team their reserves team? Is the Oceania Champions League team their reserve team? Who knows? Who cares? They're producing excellent footballers, not necessarily just by themselves, because good players are coming into their system. But as soon as they get to Auckland FC, there is an opportunity for them to impress and get game time, especially with, you need the opportunity. So injuries fall their way, they get that opportunity. Is the goalkeeper, is he Hilton?
James Hilton. He's Australian.
Yeah, he looked Australian. Yeah, he's got that.
He does look Australian.
He's got that Australian.
That was a weird one because they had Eli Jones has just come back from, he had illness, he had glandular fever, so he was meant to be with their pro league team, probably as their backup keeper, maybe their third choice keeper, but hasn't played for a while, but came back, played a couple of reserve grade games. So Michael Val gets injured right at the time when actually they do have a very young and experienced goalkeeper, still a teenager, but a good one who might be able to at least sit on the bench. Then they put a half-fit Michael Val on the bench instead of him, which was a little bit weird. Danny Hayes sort of said it was about protecting a goalkeeper and also that you don't expect to use your backup keeper, so maybe Val was going to be of more use as a presence in the squad on match day for his experience. So that's all right, especially because they did give Luka Visilic his first start and Van Fitzharris debut off the bench. James Mitchell as well played a little bit at the end too, so he's another one. I mean, which of these clubs do you think is Auckland versus Wellington in the A-League men's? Which one of them do you think has given more debuts to young New Zealand players this season? Because it's actually not the Wellington Phoenix, believe it or not.
And you could say Luke Brooks-Smith's the best of them all. I don't really see a major difference between the quality of Auckland FC youngsters and the Phoenix youngsters.
I do. I think the Auckland ones are better.
Exactly.
Especially considering Brooks-Smith is not actually an academy player. He was just signed from, he was playing first team football in Hamilton at the time.
Yeah, but then you get
into bring him through.
But he went to the academy. Van Fitzharris.
No, he went straight to the first team. He was a first team signing.
First team academy, similar thing. You're in the Phoenix system as a young player coming through that system. But the Auckland FC youngsters are, I think a lot of them are better than the Phoenix youngsters. And that is an issue for the Phoenix because they've celebrated their youth pathway and we have celebrated it for a long time. But Auckland FC are, in 2 years, they've been better than the Phoenix in both years, in both seasons. And there are signs. I mean, last year, McKinley was getting game time, right? McKinley might be better than some of the Phoenix midfielders in their system as well. So across both seasons, you've seen Auckland FC showcase players who are just as good, if not better, than the Phoenix youngsters. So it's very impressive what the Auckland FC team and system is doing. And I think it's only going to explode even more. Speak a bit like Fitzharris. What's his style? Because I didn't know much about Fitzharris. And then he came on, played a bit of like left wing type of stuff. What are you expecting from him?
Well, the thing about that is he's not even a left winger. He's an attacking midfielder. You'd normally play him through the, like, as more of where like Guillermo Mai, Lachlan Brook have been playing a bit this season, that central attacking midfielder type role. That's his best spot. I think he could also play as just a normal attacking midfielder. He's certainly played a fair bit on the wing as well, but that's his backup option. He's just getting in where there was an opportunity to play, because Jesse Randall was clearly exhausted and played a lot of football recently, big minutes during the international break as well. So like, wasn't his day. All right, Van Fitzharris, go have a dig. And he's only 4 months older than Luka Vislic. Like, he's 18 because Vislic is turning 18 in like a month or something like that. But there's not much between them. They were both at the under-17 World Cup last year. Fitzharris is a very good technical player, like ball at his feet. He's very smart. He's slippery. Saw him like jumping up and winning some headers in this game and getting flick-ons and stuff like that, doing the things that Cosgrove's supposed to be doing. And actually, to be fair to Cosgrove, like, I think second half of the season, his flick-on game has gotten pretty good. He's much more effective at like. He did
have it was a flick-on, but it was off his chest in the first half of that game to Randall. So like Cosgrove got the ball, chested it down to Randall. Randall burst up the sideline.
Yeah, when he's like playing the game with his teammates versus just playing against the guy who's marking him, which he does still way too often for my liking. The English lower league football stuff is like scrap with your marker versus like just forget about that guy. You're going to dominate him if you just play it normally. Lay that ball off to your strikers who are trying to run and score some goals, and then good things can happen. And good things have happened when Cosgrove has linked up like that. That's been good. That's been fun. Yeah, Fitzharris, I think, he's clearly someone like Luka Vislic. Both of them, Vislic was signed to their initial reserve team intake. Fitzharris played the Northern Leagues last year, still with Tauranga, and then moved to Auckland for the National League phase of it at the end of the season. But he's also already played several games off the bench in the Pro League. So he's someone who they've tried to advance pretty quickly. Like, that tells you already they've moved him through the ranks just like rapidly. He's been there less than a lot of those other guys, and he's already played for all three teams, which I think prior to him only Luka Vislic had done, playing for all three of those teams for Auckland. It's now three because Adama Koulibaly, who played a little bit in the first team last year, made his Pro League debut over the weekend. So there's now a third one. Finn McKinley's been on the bench. He's close. There's a couple others. McKinley was on the bench for this game too. It was the first time he's made a match day squad. So I was excited to see him and disappointed not to see him get on the field, but I'll balance that out again with the fact that Fitzharris, I thought, was brilliant when he came on. Like, it's not just, here's an exciting youngster, remember the name. It was like, whoever you are, the 30 minutes of production he supplied, performance he gave, was like every little contribution he did seemed to be a positive one that helped the team in some way. He was retaining the ball. He was trying to create chances. And it's just, you don't, we're just like, we started this off talking about how Luka Vislic, this guy is an incredible prospect. Couple mistakes though that leads to, like, we're making allowances for his age. You didn't have to make any allowances for Fitzharris because he was just really good, and that bodes extremely well for someone like that to continue to get further opportunities as we go. Because I think he is someone who, just based on the decisions that have been made within the Auckland hierarchy, they've clearly like highlighted his name along with Vislic, who we've seen similar sort of rapid ascensions from, where he's playing in preseason and the FFA Cup stuff. Like, those are two guys who they've clearly really highlighted as like, these are among the very best players that they have, and they've accelerated them at a team where it's very hard to get opportunities as young players, because that is a deep first team, and there's not a lot of rotation in the Steve Corica team. Except in the coaching bench, because he's probably going to be suspended for next game. So there will be a little bit of rotation there. Danny Hay got to do the press conference, and I guess he'll get to be the sitting head coach for the next game. But that only amplifies again how impressive it is, the opportunities that Vislich and Fitzharris have gotten, and the fact that it tells you that at their young ages, they've earned them.
If there's another person who like screams out, "I'm an Aussie," it is Steve Corica. And it's like when he's chirping at the refs and the linos in typical football fashion, it's like that is typical Aussie behavior. The way he, like, everything about it is just pure Aussie. So shout out to Steve Corica. Righto, let's finish with a bit of cricket. We do have the New Zealand A 4-dayer. That starts on Thursday against Sri Lanka A. And the first ODI between Blackcaps and Bangladesh will be played on Friday, obviously in Bangladesh. And 2 players from the New Zealand A 1-dayers moving, well, 3, including Ben Lister, but 2 players of note. Muhammad Abbas and Adithya Ashok. Muhammad Abbas scored a century for New Zealand A, so he's going into the Blackcaps ODI squad. And guess what? Everyone seems to have no idea that young players do play for the Blackcaps, and Muhammad Abbas has already played 3 games for New Zealand in the ODI format. He's already got a 50. He's got 104 runs at a strike rate of 101. So if you don't know that Muhammad Abbas has already played for the Blackcaps, catch up, and then also catch up to the fact that in his 3 ODIs, he's scored 104 runs with a strike rate of 100. And he's 22 years old, also bowls a lefty seam, and he scored 110 not out for New Zealand A in Sri Lanka. I don't think he's going to be just a straight up first 11 player, but he could be, because there's a lot of all-rounders. He could be an all-rounder. He was bowling in Sri Lanka. He bowled 8 overs, which wasn't huge, but his lefty seam conditions are more favourable to spin. That's why you've got Dean Foxcroft, Ashok and Lennox. Tim Pringle was good for New Zealand A, 6 wickets, leading wicket taker with Simon Keane. So why isn't Tim Pringle in the Blackcaps squad? Well, they got Jaden Lennox, who was one of the better bowlers for New Zealand when they had their ODI series victory in India. So Jaden Lennox is a lefty seamer. Oh my gosh, do New Zealand have enough spinners? Well, Jaden Lennox is a lefty, Tim Pringle's a lefty, Rohit Gulati's a lefty, Ashok's a leggy, and then you've got all the spinning all-rounders, Dean Foxcroft in this series, not to mention others like Komakonchi and Michael Bracewell, and Glenn Phillips, and Rachin Ravindra. So that will be interesting to see how Dean Foxcroft goes in that spinning all-rounder position, because I do remember when he played for New Zealand A last year, might have been in Bangladesh, he was batting way down the order. So you could see Dean Foxcroft bat 6 or 7, maybe even 8, which would be tremendous because he's a really good batter, better batter than a bowler, but he does offer that all-round spin presence. So I'm curious what Muhammad Abbas, how much game time he gets and whether he can make the most of his opportunities. But then you've also got Ashok, who did take 4 wickets in that series against Sri Lanka. And guess what? He's already played cricket for New Zealand. He's had 3 ODIs and 1 T20 international. He's got a couple wickets already in his ODIs. He was really good in the Ford Trophy for Auckland. And any spinner, like, I'm not looking for spinners to be averaging below 30, because that doesn't happen very often in New Zealand. But all the good spinners in New Zealand average in the early 30s. And Ashok's got a first-class average of 34.7. He's got a one-day average of 33.5, which shows that he is on the rise as a leggy. Obviously, Muhammad Abbas being of Pakistani heritage and Ashok being one of many Kiwi Indians in the Blackcaps setup. We're here to solve world peace. We're here to provide world peace with Pakistani and Indian relations. So it's good to have those two together representing Aotearoa to the maximum. And then we're just checking in with which seamers are going to take this opportunity because we've got so many seamers. Ben Sears has gone to a T20 job. Christian Clark is out injured. That opened the doorway for Ben Lister to come into the squad. So it'll be like, I'm curious what Ben Lister can do, but I'm not. It's not going to be a huge thing for the Blackcaps because he's well down the depth chart. We do have Will O'Rourke back in action, and we got Blair Tickner, who has basically been awesome in his appearances for the Blackcaps tests and ODIs. And of course, Nathan Smith as an all-rounder. Of course, Josh Clarkson as an all-rounder as well. I think he finished as the leading wicket taker in Ford Trophy. The core batters, Tom Latham, Nick Kelly, Henry Nichols, Will Young, and Dane Cleaver. I do like that veteran unit, especially when we're dealing with a fair amount of emerging players as well. Other batters who scored a 50 in New Zealand A's Tour of Sri Lanka, Curtis Heafy, 53 not out, and Matt Boyle, 85 runs. The big lefty does love to smash it. He scored 102 runs in the series, strike rate of 110. So it's a bit tricky to keep up with all the ins and outs across the squad. So I don't know off the top of my head who's in the New Zealand Day 4-day squad, who's not. I'll assess that when that game does start and a team is selected, but Matt Boyle will be there. Muhammad Abbas won't be there. He's with New Zealand, and Ashok is also with New Zealand for their series against Bangladesh.
Yeah, nice. I'm looking forward to how did Ben Lister go in these games? Because I'm looking forward to seeing him back in the Blackcaps because it'll be nice to have. Well, actually, I was going to say it'd be nice to have a left arm seamer, but actually there's two, isn't there? Because Muhammad Abbas is a left arm seamer as well, so it'd be nice to have two left arm seamers in the Blackcaps 11 again. Yeah, again, because we used to have Wagner and Bolt in the test team, so it's not a complete rarity, but it's been a little while.
Oh, Ben Lister took one wicket at an average of 75.
Okay, so he's saving them up for the for the Blackcaps.
It was good in the Plunkett Shield last summer. 11 wickets at 27. All right in the Ford Trophy. 6 wickets at 43. Super Smash 1 wicket at 72. He does have good career stuff overall, though. I think he deserves this opportunity. Rob Walter clearly likes him because he called him up to the Tour of Zimbabwe last year. But for Ben Lister, he needs to perform. Simple as that. Because Ray Toole, lefty from CD, was the leading wicket taker in Plunkett Shield. Then you get to the Thomas O'Connor situation, and at some point soon, if Thomas O'Connor keeps performing as he did to finish this season, he will be in the wider Blackcaps equation. Ray Toole should get that opportunity ahead of Thomas O'Connor because he's been very good in domestic cricket for much longer, but maybe he doesn't have the X factor that Thomas O'Connor appears to have. I don't know if Ben Lister is going to take his opportunity. That's the interesting thing, and it will also be very difficult conditions for him to do his best work, because I do think he likes to get a bit of nibble and a bit of bounce, and I don't know if that's going to be there in Bangladesh.
Yeah, likely to see a bit of the spin in that case, but I wonder if, because Muhammad Abbas being a slower pace bowler, which is an oxymoron, but a slow pace bowler, I guess a medium pace bowler is what they're called, isn't it? I wonder if that might mean he gets a few extra, repetitions. Did he bowl much in the A stuff?
He bowled 8 overs in 2 innings, so he didn't bowl in all 3 games. I think he's probably going to be mainly a batter in this series against Bangladesh, but he can bowl a few overs. So if you got Muhammad Abbas maybe in your top 6, he's mainly there for his batting. But there's so many all-rounders in New Zealand cricket that you can have Muhammad Abbas. He's so good at batting that he can be a top 6 batter and add a few overs. Like guys who I consider all-rounders in the series: Muhammad Abbas, Josh Clarkson, Dean Foxcroft, Nathan Smith, Will O'Rourke. And I did say Will O'Rourke because I do love Will O'Rourke's batting.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say anything, but I mean, do you remember when they were trying to tell Mark Chapman to learn how to bowl spin, to learn to be a better spinner so that he would get more Blackcaps opportunities? And then now we're just in a situation where it's hard not to have bowling, like multiple bowling options in your top 5 or 6, because a lot of these guys just happen to also be skilled bowlers who are good enough to bat that high up of the order. Like Glenn Phillips is probably the big dog among this crew, because he does bat high up, and he's not like one of those guys like Bracewell has done, or like you mentioned Foxcroft likely to do here, where it's like you're batting down the order and maybe being picked more as a bowling all-rounder. Like actually those guys might be able to hold down spots higher up, but Glenn Phillips is ahead of them because he's a better batter and also has been a really effective bowler, particularly in test stuff. Racha Ravindra at the T20 World Cup, and this crop of like younger / emerging players that we're seeing a fair bit of in this A Tour, and we'll continue to see a fair bit of, like, most of them are multi-skilled players. Most of them can contribute in different both sides of the ball, to use another one of those silly Americanisms. And even like Thomas O'Connor as the hot shot kid, like he had a couple of, well, he had one in particular big batting innings, didn't he, as well, where he smashed a big 50, and looks like he's someone who might be able to score runs down the order at a higher level. So cool stuff. That like from being in a situation where they were trying to like manufacture this to where we're just now, there's a level of abundance where it's just happening naturally.
But then you got the flip side where the best bowlers are also getting better at batting. I don't mean the best bowlers for the Blackcaps, but like the guys who are just bowlers. So Tim Pringle and Ashok will only get better at batting. Like they're pretty solid batters right now, not all-rounders, but they do have potential to get better and better at batting. Then you've got someone else like Simon Keane, who's following in the Nathan Smith, Zach Folks, Christian Clark, Muhammad Abbas mold of being quintessential seaming all-rounders. We'll be keeping a close eye on that, as we do with all Aotearoa sporting matters under our umbrella. Big up to everyone, do your best, have a jolly old time, be nice to each other, and we'll be back doing what we do to the best of our ability. Kia kaha, stay beautiful, church.